The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you. Hail Varsity Radio back on the road. We're here at Zipline, the tap room in downtown Omaha. 721 North 14th Street, right across from Charles Schwab Field. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Numbers to get in, 489-1240. No day game, no matinee, but we're getting the scene set for a right to go on to the championship against Florida, Wake Forest, LSU, round 3. The Bayou Bengals flexing last night with the long ball. We'll see how and if Wake responds. They have not lost back-to-back games at all this season. We'll get into plenty of recruiting, another commitment for Nebraska football in their 2024 class from Omaha North, Donovan Jones. Some thoughts on the talented defensive back, and a big-time dual announcement tomorrow from a couple of T-Birds. That's McMorris, that's Davon Hall at 10:30. We have some thoughts on that. Of course, it is the NBA draft tonight, but a bigger picture is most hyped prospects when it comes to drafts, and this goes across all professional drafts and quite a laundry list of players over several years. We'll get into that with Cedric Golden of the Austin American-Statesman, get his take on some Texas football, Matt Rhule in Texas. Just catch up with Ced. It's been too long. He's a big fan of the College World Series, being here years and years, covering it when Texas made their way to Lincoln. So Cedric Golden coming up in about 15 minutes. In hour 2, Hall of Fame baseball coach, 3-time national champion, and made his, well, just pretty much put a tent up in Omaha when it came to the College World Series. Former Oregon State baseball coach Pat Casey with us at 5:05. Pat Casey over in France on a wine tour. But Coach Casey will spend a few minutes with us. We're supposed to have Coach Barnett in the 5 o'clock hour as well. Numbers to get in, 489-1240. Can email Chris at hailvarsity.com and comment on the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube channel where you can watch us. Also, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Give Elijah a follow at Herbal Essence. Give Connor Clark a follow at C_Clark_27. Chris Schmidt, that's me, at Schmidt_radio on Twitter. Guys, we geared up. We fired up. Been a really good response when the TV numbers have come out here for the College World Series. Not quite sure how the NBA draft will do tonight. It doesn't have the same romance to me as it did, and that's just me being the old guy, knowing players that spent 2, 3, 4 years in college and then getting drafted, the Shaqs, the Chris Webbers, the Grant Hills of the world. Even you go back to some of the late 80 drafts, David Robinson. So I'll keep my ear on it for Wemby, as he is going to be the number 1 guy overall. First legal sports bet made at Warhorse in Lincoln earlier today. That is awesome. It wasn't you, Elijah.
Unfortunately, and that was something I was wondering as I saw
What's
that picture.
What's the bet?
I was trying to zoom in on the bet slip. What is the bet? So if anyone out there from Warhorse Casino in Lincoln is listening, we would love to know what the first legal sports bet was. Was it something?
Futures bet on Nebraska football.
Well, if you're going to be the first in the state, like you're kind of making a bit of a political statement with what your bet is, too. Like, what if you're in Lincoln, Warhorse Casino, and your first bet's on an out-of-state Creighton basketball game next year, or Creighton futures bet? Like, you can make a political statement with that first sports bet. So I'd like to know what it was and see what this guy's message is. Or maybe it's just, hey, I'm taking the number 7 horse out in New York today.
Yeah, why not? Play the ponies. What would your sports bet be, Connor? Let's go around the table here. I'm going to say, if it's possible, get me Nebraska and bowl eligibility. I'll take 6 wins for Nebraska. Ooh, I know that's a limb. Ooh, but hey, that's what I would spend my wife's money on.
I think I'd go. I'm pretty sure Wisconsin's win total next year is set at 8.5. And I might take the under on Wisconsin 8.5 wins with the season and off-season of change. But more realistically, if it was available, I would have gone for Nebraska softball to make the Women's College World Series field next season. I'm not saying that's the best bet right now in terms of confidence it's going to happen, but I think you can get pretty good value on it with Nebraska getting arguably the best women's college softball player in the country in Jordy Ball and the ripple effect that will have within the program. I think that's not a terrible bet to make right now.
Connor, you going with your good guys on Waveland?
No, he's betting over on Northwestern wins.
I would be a fool.
3? Is that at 3 right now?
I think it's 3.5 right now, and I would bet the under for that, unfortunately. I love my fits, but I don't think I'd go over there. Honestly, and this may not have the best value, but this is just kind of a bet of something that I want to happen really, really badly. But just give me Nebraska outright over Colorado in week 2. Come on. I mean,
you're just going money line, huh?
I'm just going there. I'm going to put enough money on it so it can pay for my trip to and from Denver, maybe. But give me a Nebraska win at Colorado. That would be my first bet.
Well, what's interesting
it's not been a good week for Deion.
It has not been a good week for Deion, but you could, I believe, based on the rules, as I understand them, we went through this yesterday. If I'm incorrect in my research here, somebody give us a call, give me a tweet, tell me I'm an idiot. I fully accept that. I believe you're able to bet on Nebraska and in-state teams as long as they're playing out of state. So I think you could go down to the Warhorse and bet on that Nebraska and Minnesota game, which the line currently is set at, I believe, 8.5 for Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is interesting.
Well,
it's an interesting line.
It is, and I've done a little bit of research.
I think Nebraska's...
Oh, sure. I think it's fair.
From a talent perspective, to hit one of the main topics we've hit this week, from a talent perspective, I think Nebraska is good enough to keep it to a one-score game with Minnesota. The question is how much work does Matt Rhule get done in the offseason, and how ready to go is Nebraska in week 1? Because there wasn't a single time where Nebraska was ready to go under Scott Frost. Like, if you go back through the years, there was never a season where in week 1 or week 0, whatever week they played, Nebraska looked even close to a finished product. So I'm curious to see what that preparation looks like with Matt Rhule in week 1. That's going to be the number one thing I'm looking for. And I think if you have the preparation down, I'm not saying Nebraska's going to win, I think you have enough talent comparatively to Minnesota to keep it to at least a one-score loss.
Well, to me, it's all about Minnesota and their 4 defensive starters that return. What do the other 7 look like? They've got a little familiarity with the 3-3-5 facing Syracuse last year, but not the same personnel, which could be good or bad if you're Nebraska. And what's the offensive line look like, right? If you're Nebraska, Minnesota's got monsters on their offensive line. They just don't have Mo to hand off to 38 times over 4 quarters. So, we're talking sports gaming and gambling. It's a historic day down the road where we emanate from in Lincoln. Let's get into the recruiting topic. And Nebraska, case in point of... Let's test and let's see up close and personal. That was the case with Donovan Jones out of Omaha North, a talented defensive back. Received a camp offer last weekend and was able to pull the trigger, commit to Nebraska as part of the 2024 class. The 6th defensive back to commit for 2024. The 3rd in-state prospect, Ashton Murphy, of course, from Elkhorn South. Danny Kalin from Bell West. And now Donovan Jones. And, guys, you're going to see Nebraska continue to go take more and more hybrid / back 7 guys just because of that defense. Dan says Elijah's an idiot.
This isn't about the sports gambling. This is just Dan saying you're an idiot. So thanks. Love you, Dan.
Dan always off the top rope with steel chair in hand. But 3 in-state kids, maybe some more. But the thing to know about Donovan Jones is his testing numbers. A 4'6" guy, really good vertical, 6 foot, maybe a little bit over, a chance to add some weight to that frame. And he's a guy that Nebraska coaches really liked, loved his athleticism, loved his explosiveness. And I'll say this, you've got a lot of programs to choose from around the state of Nebraska, and there's really not 2 programs above. I'm not saying that, but there's 2 programs that have kids that are currently on Nebraska's roster, and then a program in North O right now with Omaha North that's been very physical for a lot of years. And Creighton Prep and Omaha North really put out good football players, and you've seen 3 guys turn heads that are prep prospects on Nebraska's roster now, the Bullocks kids and, of course, A.J. Rollins. Now you go to Omaha North with Donovan Jones and get him as part of the 2024 class. You've got all sorts of athletes to choose from as well. West Side's got a ton of talent, of course, not just for Nebraska to pick from, but other schools have gone into West Side. Bell West, of course, loaded with talent. Creighton Prep, really good. Of course, your Lincoln team, Southeast, Southwest. Lincoln High had some D1 kids. North Star's got talent, and, of course, Pius. And, you look at East as well. I mean, they are really talented, with Malachi Coleman being a gem of the class for Nebraska here this last signing period. So it's a really good time to get in-state kids or 500-mile radius kids, and Nebraska picks up another. They're going to have more and more, we think, not only with the 2 Bell West kids that are making their announcement tomorrow, in McMorris and Davon Hall, 10:30, right, Instagram
Yep.
announcements. And then you got Carter Nelson that'll have his official visit and showcase weekend this weekend for Nebraska. Some more Nebraskans potentially coming.
Yeah, and back to your point about just what Omaha North and Creighton Prep, those are the 2 schools we think of today, with Michael Burt heading off to Iowa, the tight end. He picked up an offer a couple weeks ago, and that recruitment came together pretty quickly. Said he fell in love with the University of Iowa. We wish him the best. And then with Donovan Jones, Omaha North. Those are the 2 programs you think of in the Omaha Metro as being most akin to Big Ten and how they play football.
Just super physical.
Physical, hard-nosed. You really think about the development of those 2 programs. You have a lot of multi-year starters that come back and show development, Donovan Jones included. He's a guy that's been getting significant playing time since his sophomore year. Last year had a really good season, playing kind of a hybrid role between safety. Whenever they were in cover 2, he was back playing safety. When they were in cover 1, he was matched up usually with a slot receiver. So he shows the coverage ability. What stands out to me in his film is he might not be the hardest hitter, but again, highlight films are just that. They're highlights. I'm not going to show you the lowlights, but he really seems to be a guy that isn't afraid to stick his nose in the muck and the mire down in the box and make a tackle, and he seems to be pretty much a sure tackler whenever he gets there. It's a great job of wrapping up the legs and bringing a guy to the ground, and he comes flying in like a rocket. So I shouldn't say confused, but conflicted on where he's going to end up being the best at Nebraska. We know it's probably going to be in the secondary. Evan Cooper leading the way on this recruitment. They saw him at Friday Night Lights camp, had him back in town for a visit over the weekend, and inevitably offered him less than a week later. He's committed. So you think he's going to be somewhere in that defensive back room. I think with what he put on film at Omaha North, safety seems to be a really natural fit with his frame and his size, already at 6'1", 185, and his tackling ability. But it's an interesting pickup for Nebraska, and I think it just underscores that point about what Omaha North and Creighton Prep are to the Omaha Metro, and they're the most akin to Big Ten. And I don't think, and this isn't a slight to Bellevue West, I don't think you think of Bellevue West as being akin to a Big Ten football program with how they like to air it out.
They're their own animal with incredible athletes.
I mean, they get playmakers in space. They let playmakers do what they can with the ball, again, preferably in space, which feels kind of Pac-12. Again, not trying to be a slight here, just stylistically, that Bellevue West team, very difficult to stop the way they get playmakers in space. But then you compare that to Omaha North and Creighton Prep, where it's, hey, we're going to play double tight here. We're going to go I formation. We're going to ground and pound it. And then, guess what? Whenever you bring a safety down, we're going to go play action, and we're going to beat you over the top with it. It feels very Big Ten, and I think it's a great place for Nebraska to go. They haven't gone to Omaha North with the amount of success we've seen from that program in the last 15 years. They haven't gone to Omaha North as much as you think they would have. Husker football, not just the most recent staff, but really across the last 3 or 4 staffs.
Nope, Decker, the last Viking to make his way down to Lincoln. To your point about the spread and athleticism with some of the other programs, you can't really hit what you can't catch. So different styles can absolutely work. But back to the evaluation point, Nebraska, their staff, their recruiting folks, trusting what their eyes see and absolutely pulling the trigger. Guys, let's shift for a moment here. Not that we can make a wager on this, keeping with the theme. But I think it's a great sign, isn't it, if Nebraska or if the 2 T-Birds are making their announcement tomorrow at 10:30. Meanwhile, McMorris is scheduled for that official visit weekend.
Yeah, the timing of this makes me think everything is pointing towards Nebraska
for both.
With these 2 kids, because both kids are going to be in town over the weekend for their official visits. in hey, on the Friday, whenever you're scheduled to go down for your official visit that afternoon, you're making your commitment. If it wasn't Nebraska, do you think they'd commit somewhere else and still come to Nebraska later that day for an official visit? It makes absolutely no sense. So I think reading the tea leaves here, McMorris and Davon Hall both a pretty good bet to be Huskers by the end of the day tomorrow. And what that means is Nebraska and their wide receiver core. I think you have what you want for the future. And there's going to be another wide receiver in town tomorrow as well. A kid from down in Texas, smaller, shiftier guy, kind of in that Billy Kemp mold. His name escapes me right now. We're going to have to talk to Brady Oltmans about that. But this is a 1-2 punch of not only in-state kids, but guys I think you feel really comfortable with at the wide receiver position moving forward.
A lot of athletes, and we'll get more of your emails, Chris at HailVarsity.com. Going to be a big weekend for Nebraska. There's still some in-state prospects Nebraska is in search of. You've got Caleb Pyfrom, the offensive tackle out of Central. He is wrapping up his decision-making process. Illinois and Minnesota is still in play, of course. Looked at Nebraska. Carter Nelson going to be here this weekend. Has done his official visit tour. Notre Dame, Georgia, Penn State, the unofficial to Auburn, and then the showcase set up for him in Lincoln this weekend. We'll talk about most hyped draft picks, as it is the NBA draft across all sports. We'll get into some college football. Cedric Golden on deck, Austin American-Statesman, former head coach of Oregon State, Pat Casey, next hour.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back here, Hail Varsity Radio Road Show. We're down at Zipline, right across from the College World Series. Zipline Tap Room, North 14th Street, 721 North 14th. So if you're wearing LSU purple, we'll be seeing you down at the tap room in short order. Of course, Wake Forest trying to get into the championship round. Florida waits patiently. A man who's been to Omaha a ton of times. We say hi to Cedric Golden from the Austin American-Statesman at Ced Golden on Twitter. Catch his podcast on Second Thought. That's a weekly drop. Cedric, how we doing? Thanks for a few minutes.
Man, I'm doing great. How are you, Chris?
We are good. We can see the first base line, at least the stands leading into from our vantage point. I was hoping to buy you that beer, Cedric, this year when you got to Omaha. Maybe next year, my friend. But how's your summer going? Keeping busy?
Man, just keeping really busy and took some time off. Me and the wife went to Vegas for a few days with my cousin and his wife, and really enjoyed it out there. And again, some NBA playoff games. Are you the same? Are you in a basketball pool? There's a Chris Schmidt that finished second in a pool that I was in. I've always wondered if that was you.
I would lie to you and say, well, of course, but I have not won an NCAA tournament pool or any basketball pools for probably about 8 years. Similar to fantasy football.
Next to last, so I feel a lot better too.
But thank you for the kind shout out. I wanted to get your take. Of course, Wemby is the buzz, and I know you keep an eye on the NBA between the Rockets and Spurs, Cedric. But a broader topic: what's the most excited you've been when it comes to a draft pick over? I'm not going to put a time on it, but from a decade standpoint, but is there a player or two across all sports that you are really geeked about seeing make it to that next level, either the NFL or NBA or NHL, whatever the case may be? Is there a player you were really interested in seeing? All right, there's so much hype around him, a LeBron, a Kobe, a Mario Lemieux, that you covered and had a chance to kind of check into.
So in 2000, I think it was 2000, I covered a state semifinal between Austin Westlake, whose best player was a safety by the name of Houston Street, who became an MLB star. But so Westlake was playing Houston Madison, and Houston Madison had this quarterback named Vince Young, and I'd heard a lot about Vince Young because at the time in Houston, the Houston Texans were just getting started, and the Oilers had moved to Tennessee. So Vince Young was the biggest thing going. The Rockets have fallen on some hard times post-Hakeem. So Vince Young was the show in Houston. And that day I watched him play, and he had like 350 yards passing and about 200 yards rushing. And I go, man, this is the guy. This is the guy. This guy's going to be great. And he ends up leading Texas to a national championship in football. And after that, you just kind of felt like he was going to be just a movement of a player on the next level. And so I remember the hype going into that draft, and it was Vince, and it was Reggie Bush, those guys all going in the same draft. And the hype around these two big towns in Texas, Houston and Austin, was palpable at that time. And the only thing I can compare it to is LeBron James, watching him play on ESPN, and then, as a high school kid, watching him play and lead a bunch of guys that didn't look like much to greatness, and then seeing him become who he was. So those are the two that stand out in my mind.
We had a chance 100 years ago to talk to Vince the night before the draft. Somehow, some way that fell into our lap, and he was super excited. Yeah, I don't know how, but I got an email, and it worked out, and I still have that interview. I will not air it because I was horrible, but Vince wasn't. So,
I find that hard to believe. You're not. No way. It was Vince, 20 years. It was like 20 years, almost 20 years ago, though. Yeah.
No, I know. Two guys, Mike Vick. I was like, okay, is Mike Vick gonna transcend the NFL? And I know Vick had 3 different acts in the NFL, and he was still a baller to watch. But I remember watching, we had a little black and white TV, watching King Griffey Jr.'s Major League debut. He had a triple. Watching, eating breakfast with my little brother, like, dude, this guy's going to be awesome. King Griffey Jr. Those are the two guys. With Earl Campbell, was he can't miss even from the get-go? Because I know he was incredible at Tyler, and then he was what he was with Texas, and then killed it with Houston as the number 1 pick overall. Earl's a lot like LeBron, lived up to the hype every step of the way.
Well, here's the thing. We both grew up in the same. I'm from Tyler, just like Earl, and our families know each other. Now he's like 11 years older than me, so when he was doing it up in high school, I was only like 6 or 7, but I remember it because the babysitter took me to the games. And
oh wow!
And then when he started doing some of the same stuff at Texas, I was a little bit older, so I could kind of appreciate it more. He was always a man among boys. He was always a man among boys. And when the great Jim Brown was asked who are the best running backs ever, he goes, well, there's me, and then there's Earl, and then you can decide who after that. I don't care. That's enough credibility for anybody. If Jim Brown says you're the best, second best to ever do it, then that's enough for me. But Earl Campbell was always a man among boys at whatever level. And I wrote about this last year, and I'm very blessed to have a relationship with him, and I mentor his sons in business and in the journalism game. And the one thing that I will say about him, and people don't talk about it a whole lot, that he played for the Houston Oilers, which meant he played the Pittsburgh Steelers twice every year, not counting the playoffs. So imagine how good he would have been if he didn't have to go up against the Steel Curtain twice a year. And people wonder how beaten up he was. Well, if you're going up against Joe Green and Dwight White, Donnie Shell and Jack Lambert and Jack Ham, those are all Hall of Famers on the other side of the ball. And you think they really cared what Dan Pastorini was going to do to them? They were honed in on Earl Campbell. It was 1 against 11, and he was still a great player despite having to go up against those great defenses.
Cedric Golden's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio, and Cedric, to bring this back to the Spurs and to Victor Wembenyama, he's got to follow in the footsteps of former number 1 overall picks for the Spurs like David Robinson and Tim Duncan, and those are big shoes to fill. But what is the mood down in Texas right now in the hype around Victor Wembenyama? What do Spurs fans think the ceiling is for a guy like that in his future with the Spurs?
They have to, Elijah, they have to be thinking that the sky's the limit, because first of all, you have the kingmaker in Greg Popovich. And even at age 74, he's still the OG. And that's probably he's probably dipped his toe into the fountain of youth after they got that first pick. Maybe he was thinking of stepping aside, but this is kind of maybe rejuvenated him, gave him a little shot of espresso. For me, I think the game has changed, and I think the best question I ever asked Pop, and he's not great with the media, but he gave me props for this question, was when they were playing, I think they were playing the Rockets in the playoffs, and I go, Pop, when you first started, you guys would dump it off to Big Dave, and then later Timmy, and if they didn't have anything, they'd dump it back out to the guards who would make something happen. And now you got guards jacking up threes, bringing the ball down like Steph Curry, James Harden, averaging 25 to 30 a game. He goes, it's the best question I've heard in a while because it's so difficult now to coach in this era where there aren't very many big men. Now, Victor is 7'5", but he's got ball handling skills. So I wonder, are we looking at a bigger version of Kevin Durant? Are we looking at a bigger version of Giannis? I hope we're looking at a bigger version of Giannis. Because do we really want to see a 7-5 guy jacking up 7 or 8 threes a game? I know the back to the basket thing is not as big as it was. You look at the game now, guys. You got Joel Embiid, you got the Joker, and you got Giannis. Those guys have post moves. And after that, LeBron James might be the 4th best big man in the league because in his advanced age, he's playing more 4 and 5. Anthony Davis is another one. So I hope that they develop him as a big man and don't turn him into some cream puff three-point shooter at 7'5". I long for the days where guys get it on the box and turn and dunk. And at 7'5", he can turn and he's right at the rim. So he's got to put some weight on. He's really skinny. So I don't think you're going to get a superstar first year out. I think there's going to be some growing pains. They have to surround him with some more talent.
Cedric Golden is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Cedric, about a minute here, but we don't talk very much hockey on the show, but there's 2 generational prospects in the NBA draft and in the NHL draft with Connor Bedard. I mean, everybody knows who that number 1 overall pick is going to be in both drafts. When's the last time you've seen something like that?
I don't know because I don't follow hockey. I have no idea. I know Michael Jordan and Wayne Gretzky came along around the same time, but I don't think they were the same year. So I would be out of my purview to guess. So no idea because I just don't follow hockey at all.
Ced, what's the buzz here? Actually, do you have 5 more minutes? Can we keep you on the other side?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, yeah, because I want to talk a little Coach Sark and Texas expectations and little Matt Rhule with you, too. So hang tight for us, Ced.
And Cedric, before we get there, I want to get your take with there not being that much drama at the top of the NBA draft. You know who the first 3 picks are probably going to be. Are you going to be watching College World Series tonight, or are you going to be watching NBA draft?
There's no question I'm watching LSU Wake Forest. The NBA draft, I'll watch it online, but the 65-inch screen, which my wife won't let me expand, will be on College World Series from beginning to end.
Cedric Golden with us. Cedric, hang tight. We'll be right back with you. We're here at Zipline, Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow, getting things set for LSU Wake Forest. You're invited down, 16 beers on tap, and we're going to see a lot of purple and a lot of black and gold with Wake Forest coming in here as they're trying to find their way as the top seed to meet up with Florida. More with Cedric Golden, Gary Barnett next segment as well, as we are at Zipline Downtown Tap Room in Omaha, North 14th Street, 721 North 14th, just about not even a half block away from Charles Schwab Field. Cedric Golden continues with us at Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Hail Varsity Radio back with you as we're at Zipline, ready for the CWS tonight, Wake Forest LSU. Cedric Golden, Austin American-Statesman, at Ced Golden, continues with us. And Ced, I wanted to get your take on Matt Rhule. He's been doing a lot of work down in Texas, did great things at Baylor. How how open is the state, in your opinion, for out-of-state recruitment, similar to what Nebraska's trying to do? They've done well the last couple cycles in the state.
Well, I know this: when Matt Rhule walks into a living room in the state of Texas, he's getting credibility. He pulled off a miracle at Baylor. I mean, that thing was underground after our brows, and he took them from a scandal all the way to a Big 12 title appearance. And when you look at how important that was, rebuilding that program from the ground up, and not only winning on the field, but also winning in the community. He had his players out doing community service, speaking at charitable events, showing up at churches, and just basically rebuilding the Baylor football brand. And for him and Dave, later Dave Aranda, but for him and AD Mack Rhodes to come in and rebuild that thing, along with the president, Dr. Livingstone, that was a damn miracle. It's a miracle. And so, hated to see the struggles in Carolina. I've always viewed him as a college coach because he's all about people. And Matt Rhule knows how to talk to you on a human level. And so Nebraska has been in the struggle bus for so many years. It's been a minute since Tommy Frazier wrecked shop. It's been a minute.
Yeah. It's
been a minute since the upset when they were number one in 1996 and lost to Texas in the Big 12 title game. So that's 25 years, going on 30 since Nebraska's been really good. So I think he's the guy to rebuild it. You're not going to be able. The difference between Nebraska and Texas is you can't. I don't think you can win just by having the best athletes in Nebraska. No, you got to be able to go to Dallas, and you got to be able to go to Houston and Atlanta, and in certain parts, L.A., and Ohio. That's where the athletes are, and so you got to be able to be a national recruiter, and you got to be able to convince them that Nebraska can be Nebraska again, because it's been a while. Matt Rhule's the guy for that job. He's not allergic to hard work. He's a roll up your sleeves type. He has a spiritual base which still plays very well in living rooms, particularly in the South. And I think that while I think that he probably could have held off for a less daunting task, I still think he can build Nebraska into a team that can eventually compete for Big Ten titles. That's a tough conference with USC rolling in there here pretty soon. So I still do think that he can make it happen in Nebraska.
Cedric, quickly here before we get you out, have you seen the recruiting landscape in Texas change at all since the announcement that Texas is headed off to the SEC? Do you see different schools coming into Texas, or still the same old, same old? I guess the heart of this question is it open season in Texas right now with how conference realignment has changed the hierarchy in the state?
It's been open season in Texas ever since the Aggies left in 2011. LSU's always had its thumbnails here. Nick Saban has always been in Texas. Kirby Smart has cherry-picked. And then you guys are both from Nebraska, so back in the day, Coach Osborne and the Pellinis always were mining Dallas and East Texas for talent. So it's still the most fertile, along with California and Georgia, recruiting area in the country, and nothing has changed but because of any kind of realignment. The athletes are here, and the coaches know at the big Power 5 conferences, if I can get 3 or 4 good players from Texas, I've got me a good recruiting class, because it's where the athletes are.
Cedric, we'll do this sooner rather than later, bud. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Always a pleasure, brother. Y'all take care.
All right, man. There he is, Cedric Golden. A little bit of overtime with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. We're going to squeeze Coach Barnett in. He's on a tight timeline. Interested to get his take. How did he set up big official visit weekends when he was running Northwestern in Colorado? That's a big thing for Nebraska this weekend, kind of their last hurrah before you get to July. And Nebraska has quite the list. Great stuff from Cedric, though, and very familiar with Coach Rhule and what was done in Texas, and loved his take there. We'll no doubt post that up as we are excited to have a few minutes here with Coach Gary Barnett here on Hail Varsity Radio, perhaps. And Pat Casey going to join us. Oregon State's head baseball coach, made quite a living here in Omaha, winning 3 national championships, playing for a couple more.
And Pat Casey was a guy that, if you look back at the history of Oregon State baseball, they were nothing before Pat Casey came to town. He revitalized that program. He, I think, built a new stadium during his tenure there. As you said to lead off the show, he made an annual trip to Omaha for Oregon State and Oregon State fans. This was not a rare occasion for him. He is very familiar with Rosenblatt, with TD Ameritrade, now Charles Schwab Field. And I'm really looking forward to have him on, because if there's anyone in the country that knows how to produce winning baseball results to get to Omaha, it's Pat Casey.
Let's welcome in Hall of Fame coach from Colorado and Northwestern, Gary Barnett, with us. Coach, we're a couple of minutes tardy. Thanks for squeezing us in. How are you?
No problem, Chris. I'm doing well. I'm in Leland, Michigan at a golf outing, and it's beautiful up here. If you haven't been to northern Michigan, it's spectacular.
I need to get up there. I got back from the Black Hills and loved it. Coach, we're up against a hard timeout, so I got about 2 minutes, and I might keep you about 3 or 4 minutes on the other side if you've got time. But tell me how your plan was seen through when it came to official visit weekends. I asked that because it's a showcase weekend for Nebraska. They're bringing in the top talent they want to get a yes from. How did you lay that out for prospective students when it came to those big weekends of talent?
Well, the most important thing is that I wanted it to feel like a family. And so I did whatever we thought at the time for whatever particular athlete he needed to get that feeling. When he left there, I wanted him to feel like he was part of a big family and that people cared about him. So, that had most of it always comes down to how he's treated by the other players. And if the players treat him like he's one of them and with them, then they feel that. And to me, that's really, really important.
Gary Barnett with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. He is on a golf outing in northern Michigan. We'll ask him here shortly on the other side of the break if he's had to wear a turtleneck or not. Coach, it's not too chilly up there, is it?
It's warm. We're in shorts and just played 18 and sitting out on the deck enjoying northern Michigan.
I love it. And you get to talk to us during your
and we get to talk
guest.
to you on this. I got my own deck out here, so.
I love it. Hang tight. We'll be right back here in a couple of minutes, Coach. We'll wrap up the hour with you. Thanks again, Gary Barnett. A few minutes here talking some recruiting with him. Get the latest on some college football with Coach Barnett here next segment. And a Dion update. So Coach Barnett, good stuff from Cedric Golden. Pat Casey, Hall of Fame and national championship coach. A lot of time here at the World Series in Omaha. Get his take on, Coach Childress, his thoughts on LSU Wake Forest tonight, and just that baseball build. So hour one, winding down here at Zipline, the downtown Omaha tap room where we're at till 6. More with Coach Barnett on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Winding down this first hour, it's Hail Varsity Radio right outside the College World Series at Zipline downtown Omaha tap room. Gary Barnett winding down the hour with us. Coach, it's been a very fruitful summer for Nebraska. A lot of the official visits have turned into offers that have turned into commitments. And I wanted to get your thoughts on just the eye test or the testing that you do as coaches when you get kids to camp, and then how you feel confidence-wise about making that offer. Nebraska and Coach Rhule and their staff have done a lot of in-person evaluating and then making offers. It doesn't matter what the star ranking is for the kid. What's your reaction to Nebraska's process right here, and I guess your thoughts on Rhule's evaluation ability?
Well, the star system really, for most coaches, means nothing. I mean, you want to see the eyeball test. You want to see whether or not they fit into your program. You want to see whether academically, the star system takes none of that into consideration. How they fit, how they are academically, all those sort of things which ultimately make a difference in whether or not you take a player or offer a player. So you have your own set of evaluations, and you really don't care if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5-star. If they meet your evaluation standards and what you want in a player, and it's a good fit, and fit is everything right now, especially as much movement as there is. This transfer portal, you want a good fit. You want a guy that's going to fit into Nebraska, and at least, at this point in time, preliminarily, you can tell that he's going to be a good fit for you. So that's really important. Stars don't mean much. So, we couldn't have official visits, Chris, when I was coaching at this time of year. So it was. This is all new, and so it's one of those things. Our coaches used to be able to take June or at least July off. Now you can't do that. It's all year round, and so these coaches are recruiting constantly, and they're having these visits.
Gary, last thought here. How did your evaluation process change whenever you moved from Colorado to Northwestern, or did it change when you made that switch?
Yeah, it changed a lot when I went from Colorado to Northwestern because we just couldn't fish in the same pond that everybody else was fishing in. We had a very specific student-athlete standard that we couldn't go outside of. Now, everybody wanted the same student-athlete that we might want, but we couldn't go after the same student-athletes that everybody else had. So it changed drastically. We had to go nationally because of that. There wasn't any question. We could not just do localized recruiting. We had to go everywhere to find guys who wanted to go to Northwestern.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, last thought, what did you shoot today?
You know what, Chris? I limped in with an 82.
That's pretty good.
But it's a practice round. Tomorrow's when it really starts. So I learned a lot about the golf course. I'll be ready. I got 27 tomorrow I got to go get. So.
Wow, 27. Fierce competition, SEC West or Big Ten West?
Let's see. SEC West.
Okay, that's the competition level. I love it.
Well, my advice to you, shoot for the short stuff.
Pardon me?
Yeah, take advice for golf from Elijah. He said shoot for the short grass is what he was saying. The fairway.
I get that. It's a good idea. I'm gonna try it.
Coach, you take care. Appreciate you giving us a few minutes.
All right, guys. Great being with you. Bye-bye.
Take care. There he is, Coach Barnett. Pat Casey kicks off hour 2 on the way.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Coach Casey, hey, Chris Schmidt here with Hail Varsity. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How are you guys?
We're good. It's fun to get caught up with you again and talk some CWS. I know you're on vacation, though. Is that correct?
I know. It's crazy. Yeah, I used to vacation in Omaha, man. I kind of miss that,
Well, tell me, Coach, about France. What have you been doing over yonder?
Well, we had a winery that followed our baseball program everywhere and took trips throughout the year. So if you go to Arizona, they'd put a trip together and haul people all over. And so one day I said, hey, I'll go. And they made 20 European trips. And so, we just decided, okay, let's do it. So we jumped on a plane and went with the Ola Hills Winery from up there in Rick Rial, Oregon, and we've been just kind of cruising around. We stop and we're on a boat, and then we stop at certain cities. We started and we flew into Paris, and we went to Lyon, and then down into Avion, Arles, and just get out of cities and go in and check out wineries and other historical sites, and just really not doing nothing, man. Just kind of hanging out, eating a lot of food.
Well, that sounds good. Hall of Fame coach Pat Casey with us, Oregon State, 3-time national champ. He's right about it. His vacations were in Omaha all these years for the CWS. So when it comes to France, and is it weird? Are you still catching highlights at least? You keeping an eye on the greatest show on dirt?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really funny because everybody on the ship has asked me a question, hey, who won? Did you see it or whatever? But yeah, I flip that thing on as soon as I get it to see. I know who's playing who, know when they're playing, what the scores are, and everything else. So, and I know so many of those guys in the industry. It's kind of fun to stay on top of that, and really felt pretty good about all Roberts going. I mean, they came in and took care of Oregon, so I felt pretty good about that.
Pat Casey's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. We're at Zipline, just right across from the College World Series at Charles Schwab Field. And Coach, you've been so awesome. We get to talk a couple times a year, about every year, and that all started with you and making your way to Radio Row back in 05 for us, 04, 05. And I want to get your take on just as you've been able to step back and enjoy some retirement, and I know you still miss the dugout as well, but just your accomplishments and the build. What was the way you went about your build at Oregon State and then the payoff? Well,
first of all, I can remember coming and sitting down with you guys, and that was awesome, and I appreciate and love the relationship as well. So, man, it's good hollering at you. But I just think that the belief system, what we could accomplish, that was the first thing. I don't think that anything really great gets accomplished unless you actually really, really believe in it. So I think that was the first thing that we had to establish, was the fact that we were able to get into some guys' minds that we could accomplish some great things. And when you do that, consequently, you win more games, and win more games, you get better players, and you get better players, you get a chance to get to the middle of the United States of America twice a week, or 2 weeks out of the year. So, that was our goal. That was our ultimate goal. And we absolutely got some great players too. And then that was one of the keys. And I mean, once you get guys that have had success and win, and they kind of pass that torch on, and it becomes something that you take pride in, and you eventually get to the point where you're not trying to convince somebody that it's a dream to go to Omaha. You're talking about that's where we will finish the season, and so just was surrounded with great kids, and that's the truth, man. They're just really, really good players, really, really good coaches to work with. Had an opportunity to work with some tremendous guys, and then you gotta have the right things happen for you. And we found out that the more you believe in it, the more they happen.
Pat Casey's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, talking program build. And Coach, when it comes to recruiting, was it first and foremost, was it love of the game? Is that the first trait you looked in, or was it that 98 mile per hour heater?
Well, I'll tell you, first we weren't getting that guy. We could tell him how much we love the game and everything else. That guy left-handed going 98 said, "No, Coach, I'm not coming to Oregon State." But no, it first started out with the right fit. We just needed guys. We used to call it our kind of guy. We just needed guys that wanted to play the way we played and believed in what we were doing. And like I said, when that happens and you start winning, then that guy with a little bit more talent, he starts coming and he starts believing. But what's really funny is the last time in 18 when we played Arkansas, we actually lost Stephen Kwan for the championship series, and so we ended up starting 3 guys that walked on for us in the championship series. Kyle Novak, Jack Anderson, and Zach Taylor. Those guys are walk-ons starting in the championship series. And so it's a combination of things. I mean, it's not just the best players. I mean, you have to have talent. And I think talent's there. I mean, I think the last 3 teams standing can tell you they got plenty of talent, but you also got to have the right guys. And, there's some years, 07 is one of them, man. I don't think we were the most talented team in the country, and but we were the best team in the country. And so that was kind of separated for us. And winning brings recognition that you didn't think you were going to have, and recognition brings players, and good players bring other good players. And so I was just fortunate to be in a place where some magic happened, and we just keep running, and kept getting better and better.
Pat Casey, a few minutes with us. Pat Casey is in France doing this interview. God love you, as he is on a bit of a vacation. I'm not a huge wine guy. It's not that I dislike it. I just don't know it. I have friends that are. Is there a Pat Casey flavor? Meaning, do you go red? Are you the white? Do you like the Pinot? I mean, what are you drinking in France?
Well, you gotta know, when I came to Corvallis in 1994, I was from a little town called Newburgh, coaching at George Fox College, and when I saw people drinking wine, I thought, "Holy cow, man, I'm in the wrong place." Just draw me a regular cold beer, and I'm good. You know what I mean? And so, I live in the Willamette Valley, so they have great Pinots there, and for me personally, I really like cabs, but I'm coming to appreciate tasting other wines and appreciating what they do and how they're brought to, let's say, fruition, if you will. But pretty interesting over here. The whole, some of these regions you're in, that's everybody in their village. That's what they do. They work at the winery and they produce wine, and they don't even have to call them cabs or Pinots or Chablis or whatever. They just go by the region they're in. That's how popular they're in, and so it's very, very interesting. I love world history too, so that has been an eye-opener to maybe see things that we were at the Pope's Palace the other day, and they talking about structures that have been there since the 10th century. So pretty interesting stuff. And I can tell you that if I had a uni and I was coaching, I'd rather be in Omaha, Nebraska. That's for sure.
I know you would be. I absolutely know you would be. Pat Casey, longtime head man at Oregon State with us, Hail Varsity Radio, 3-time national champ. Coach, I want to get your take on the teams that are still standing. I know you're close with the LSU program, and there was some thought about that a couple, 3 years ago for you. They're still alive. A little long ball love last night. Wake Forest is dynamite, so it's a heavyweight fight tonight at 6, and then Florida's got their feet up a little bit, waiting for the winner here. How do you see this thing shaking out as we have a weekend left?
Well, I've been in both ends of that stick. In 07 we ran the table, and in 06 and 18 we did it the hard way. So I can respect all of that. People ask me when this thing came out. I have not seen enough of Wake Forest, but I saw them play Alabama in the Super Regional, and so I saw what they did to them at home. I always felt, somebody asked me on this trip, "Hey, who do you think will win this thing?" I said, "I really don't know." I can tell you that LSU and Florida are extremely, extremely talented with frontline guys. I mean, you're talking about guys that can go real early in the draft. Wake Forest, to me, is a team that was a lot like us when we first got there, and we rolled in there, and people were wondering, "Wow, what's this story all about?" So, I just think you got three extremely talented teams. I'm assuming that LSU will throw Skeens tonight. Florida's lined up with their pitching pretty good, I would think. And, who knows? If they have that magic, can get it rolling. If Skeens throw, if you beat him, because I think they beat him to open up the thing. I'm not even sure who'd Wake Forest play right out of the chute. They played Tennessee, isn't that right? Or LSU. Didn't LSU open up with Tennessee, or was it LSU and Wake Forest?
I got to go back. It's kind of a blur right now, but Wake.
I think it was LSU.
Yeah.
I think Wake Forest beat LSU right out of the chute, so I think they beat Skeens
3-2.
And I'm thinking if you beat that dude twice in a week, you're gonna something good for you, because he's real. And they obviously, like I said, they got a tremendous club. But LSU's kind of had that thing where they haven't pitched as well on Saturdays and Sundays, and obviously that's turned around in the World Series. They throw a shutout, and like you said, been playing long ball all year long. That didn't surprise me at all. But anyway, it would not surprise me if you see an all SEC World Series championship. I love the Wake Forest story, man. I'm actually with a gal here who asks me every time I see her. She says, "Wake Forest win?" Because her husband went to Wake Forest, played basketball at Wake Forest. So I said, "Let me check it out for you, Ann." So I just think that obviously Omaha has done it up right again. I'm positive about that, and probably seen a heck of a World Series, and I look forward to following this game that's going to happen tonight. So. You guys get to sit right there and watch it all go down. So I guess I'll have to try another wine tonight. Make sure
I know you will. Pat Casey. Pat Casey's on a trip to France, touring wine country. in France. Still talking College World Series with us here on Hail Varsity. Coach, I know in 05, that's the last roadie Nebraska made up I-80, and that team is so special to so many Nebraska fans. And even in years after, you'd take on Nebraska. Nebraska'd find you in Arizona a lot of times to start the year. Great relationship with Coach Erstad, and also a ton of respect for Will Bolt with what he's doing in Lincoln. And I know he's had to shake up his coaching staff a little bit. You also have, of course, the Bill Moose connection from Oregon. So I ask you this, thoughts on Rob Childress? He's been elevated to pitching coach, and I assume you know Rob a little bit, or at least know of Coach Childress for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob's first-class guy. I mean, just absolutely, he's going to be great. There is no question about that. I always thought Rob was a super recruiter, and, Rob was the pitching coach in 05.
Yep. When
DVH took him there. And so, known Rob and watched what he did at A&M. And I thought that, it's kind of surprising to me that if you look at the number of regionals and super regionals he was in there at A&M, I just thought he did a much better job than they thought. And great hire. I mean, you got a guy that's done it, been there, wants to be there, has his heart and soul right there. So good for Will. I mean, that's just, and I think that I honestly think because – the location of it and the name Nebraska and that kind of thing. And it won't surprise me at all to see Nebraska make a real move.
Well, and a thought for you, I mean, was Nebraska ever a consideration for you when there was an opening?
Well, I obviously talked to Bill about it, but, I was just in a position where, wasn't ready to do it at that time. And then, always looking out to make sure that it's the right place for my family and this and that and the other. And, Nebraska's awesome. Like I said, if I was in a different position at a different time, there would be no question that I could do that there and would love to do it there. And, I think it's a great place. And I think that, like I said, I think you're going to see a good move here. I think it'll be really good for Rob because I think he'll feel like he's got more of a opportunity to make a difference with that club when he's in a different role now. And I think especially with the recruiting piece, I think he did a great job. So, I look for them to make a real move.
Last thought here, Pat Casey is in France on a wine tour. We're still talking college baseball. Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, what's that conversation like across the table from Bill Moose when he's offering you a job? I mean, Bill Moose is pretty renowned negotiator.
Well, we didn't really even get to that point.
Okay.
I mean, we just got to a point where, he was saying, hey, would Nebraska be someplace? And we, Bill knew that I was kind of early in this retirement thing, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. We talked about coaches, we talked about other people. We talked about a lot of things, man. We talked about his passion for wanting to see Nebraska become a powerhouse in baseball, and he believed it, and he thought that they could and thought that they would. And so we talked about that. And but Bill, yes, can be very persuasive. So I stayed as far away from him as I could, because I have a good relationship with him. And I wanted to make sure that I said we're still buddies, So, but they made a great hire. And like I said, I think Rob is going to have a huge influence on that program, especially now that he's in a different role. And I just got all the respect in the world for what he's done in the baseball world, for sure.
Well, Coach Casey, we'll let you get back to your party and your group of friends. Thanks for giving us time, as always, and we always love chatting with you here, Coach.
That's super awesome, man. I wish I was there tonight, but I'm not, so you guys take care of it for me, all right?
Will do, Coach. You take care.
All right. Great talking to you.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Oregon State, former Oregon State head baseball coach Pat Casey, as he spent some time. He's over in France on a wine tour, but he misses Omaha. Good to chat with him. Good to get his thoughts on the Nebraska job. Bill Moose was really trying to target him for that. And, of course, Coach Casey's like, Will Bolt's the guy, and great insight on from coach to coach on Rob Childress there. So pretty cool to hear from Pat Casey, Gary Barnett earlier, and Cedric Golden we hit on this with Cedric Golden, and we have open phones and email inbox here till 6. We're down here at Zipline, 14th, North 14th Street, just right across from the College World Series, the downtown Zipline Tap Room, 721. Man, just a lot of LSU fans wondering, and some Wake Forest fans are hanging out as well. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark.
And did you see the pitching matchup tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, it's going to be a good one because Paul Skeen's on the mound for LSU. That was the big question. Wake Forest, they're well rested. They got their ace taking the mound tonight. The question was LSU going to be able to put their ace up there as well? And
they were ready.
Yes, it is. So it is going to be one of those pitching matchups tonight. If you're down in Lincoln near the Warhorse Casino, maybe bet the under on total runs. I can say that now, as it's going to be two great pitchers tonight. The question is how much is still left in the gas tank after a long College World Series. But regardless, I think we're going to have some fun tonight in Omaha.
No, going to be awesome and must-see TV. And, of course, we're just thankful as all get out that Zipline's having us back out here. We've been here a lot of years. It's Zipline getting you ready for the College World Series. So we touched on this with Cedric. And each year, you've got that number one draft pick or top three, specifically NBA, NFL, even the college baseball draft. And it's super interesting to see how things have turned out. And Bill Bender, friend of the show from Sporting News, has put out his 50 most hyped draft prospects of all time and really didn't put a ceiling on it. Coming in right in at number 50 was Randy Moss, and Randy Moss was absolutely top pick overall worthy.
Yeah.
Randy Moss's baggage from Notre Dame to Florida State to Marshall, I think I got that order right. It might have been Florida State to Notre Dame, but he ended up at Marshall and still was a finalist for a loaded Heisman field in 98. Moss ended up falling all the way to like 20th with Minnesota. We know what Moss did in his pro career. Incredible with New England. Kind of drifted in Oakland and was phenomenal in Minnesota out of the gate. So he's a guy you wondered how he would translate. He comes in at number 50. Kobe Bryant is, in some people's eyes and mind, a GOAT. Kobe, it was a guy that was straight out of high school, of course, the Mamba. And then eventually, I think second or third year, broke into the starting lineup. But straight out of high school, along with Kevin Garnett, both those guys always tripped my trigger a bit. How would they translate right out of high school? But guys, do you have a player or two in your sports lifetime that, lived up to the hype or was somebody you were really intrigued by when it came to the draft? And if you're a hockey fan, you've got Gretzky, you've got Mario Lemieux, you got Sid the Kid. Those are three names that come to mind. I was young at the time, but I remember the Herschel Walker era. I have seen enough Sports Century and ESPY and of course, 30 for 30s. Magic and Larry, of course, were two guys that, man, there was so much buzz about them from the NCAA tournament to the NBA. Earl Campbell's a guy. He was my senior year of high school, but Allen Iverson, how did he translate? Allen Iverson was phenomenal. Doc Gooden, a really high draft pick. Darryl Strawberry, Eric Davis, Patrick Ewing, Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, Bryce Harper. Harper's been in MLB for a long time, but he was that buzz, can't-miss prospect. But I'm going to stick with the two. One in my later years, Michael Vick. One when I was a kid, Ken Griffey Jr. Those are the two guys that, to me, were can't miss. And I'm still wowed to this day how good LeBron James is and how much he's over-delivered to the hype, because he was incredible. There's the Felipe Lopez example of the next Jordan out of high school on the cover of Sports Illustrated in the mid-'90s. Then there's LeBron, and then you add TV into it. And then you add LeBron coming in and being physically and mentally able to compete with pros, old pros in the NBA.
And Connor, if you want to lead off here, I don't want to take one of the choices from you, but one of the guys that I think of, I actually think of three basketball guys, and I want to start off and get Connor's take, because I remember Derrick Rose. his career from I believe it was Simeon High School in Chicago.
Right, yep.
And then he goes off and he's at Memphis where he puts the team on his back in the NCAA tournament. Everyone goes, okay, this is Derrick Rose kid. And then he goes and he's selected first overall by the hometown team, the Chicago Bulls. I remember the hype around that selection with what Derrick Rose could be for the Bulls.
He had 2 healthy knees, man.
If he'd still be probably at the top of the game right now. He'd be in year 12, I think, of his NBA career, something like that, year 13. We should be getting towards the tail end, but if he had 2 healthy knees, he's one of those guys that was in the process of living up to the hype until he couldn't figure out how to land on 2 legs instead of 1 after his flying layup attempts. I mean, Connor, is that...
I mean, Derrick Rose was definitely one of the, and I think I lost you guys here for a second. Oh, there we go. But yeah, Derrick Rose, he definitely comes to mind just because, I mean, people in, our demographic and in our age group, especially growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, was like, well, like Derrick Rose was like the guy. Like, he is what your early NBA memories are, at least for me and all my friends. Like, Derrick Rose was, I mean, the savior for the Bulls, right, at the time. So he comes to mind. Another Chicago athlete that comes to mind, and this is more so when he was about to get called up rather than he was drafted, although the hype was around him getting drafted, was Chris Bryant. And now he's, dealt with injuries the past couple of years now. Ever really since COVID, he hasn't really been the same Chris Bryant. But, I mean, the hype around him getting called up in his first year in, I believe, this is bad of me as a Cubs fan, but winning in 2016 when he was called up after a couple weeks being in Iowa, and the hype around him getting to the major leagues, doing what he does, and then in 2015 he was called up, my apologies, but wins the NL Rookie of the Year, wins the NL MVP a season later, and the Cubs go on to win the whole thing for the first time in 108 years. So Chris Bryant is definitely one that comes to mind. And then another guy who's more recent college basketball-wise, but his career really hasn't been anything special in the NBA because he's just hurt all the time, is Zion Williamson.
Yeah.
I mean, he was an absolute world beater at Duke. I mean, I had never seen an athlete like Zion before. He's a heavier LeBron James, 6'8", 285 pounds, can explode out of the gym. And he really hasn't equated to anything super huge in the league because he's always dealing with some sort of injury or whatever you may have it. But he's the name that comes to mind, too, in the basketball world. And I'm really disappointed that he hasn't really been the same since leaving Duke because, my goodness, I mean, he was a freak of nature. And I still don't know how that Duke team did not win the national title that year.
And Zion's an interesting choice to me because he's the first athlete that I feel like I've really watched his entire career from like he was at the beginning of the social media era where really like high school kids were really starting to go viral with what they were doing on the basketball court. You had Andrew Wiggins before that, who's another high selected pick, another guy with a lot of hype around him. But Zion was the first guy to me where it's like, look at this sophomore in Virginia who is dunking on kids, jumping out of the gym. He's your next greatest basketball player to be coming out here. Now he's going to Duke, and look at his career at Duke where you have the moment where he breaks through his shoe because he's so explosive. Like, he felt like he was going to be that next guy in the NBA, and as Connor kind of laid out, he hasn't quite lived up to the hype because of injuries and whatnot. Off-the-court drama as well this offseason.
Weight's been the issue. I mean, I try and catch as much Charles Barkley as I can, fellas. Mm-hmm. And he's reached out to Zion and says, dude, I was in your shoes being a little bit too overweight. Early Charles Barkley versus MVP Charles Barkley, or even year 2 or year 3 Charles Barkley, where he just quit eating pizza at midnight and he'd work out. And he leaned up. He's always been explosive and incredible and played beyond his height, and Charles is huge. But that's the thing with Zion. He's got to get in shape. He's got to probably draw. And listen, you need bulk. You need to be physical, even though the NBA is not even close to what it was 15 or 20 years ago physicality-wise. But that's really the thing dragging Zion down. It's weight. It's getting in shape. We all hate running, or most of us hate running. And for him, the guy has gotten paid a ton. It's guaranteed. He doesn't really give a damn anymore. I mean, I don't know how much he loves the game. You got to grind and be great, and it was easy, even easy for him in college. But once you get to the NBA, he's just kind of coasted, and it's too bad. A guy that I want to say that comes into my picture, and I remember the hype, and I remember the recruiting story, and this was from Big 12 media days back in the day from Bob Stoops. And it's a legendary recruiting pitch where Bob Stoops goes and gets Adrian Peterson. And okay, so you look at Adrian and his time at Oklahoma and how good those teams were and how incredible he was and how, from a physical standpoint, he's a guy that maybe could have jumped from the NFL or from high school to the NFL and maybe survived. But you look at Adrian not winning the Heisman, but still being incredible, being a really high draft pick for the Vikings, still trying to make a training camp at age 38 despite shredded knees. And, yeah, he went for 2,000 yards after he had the three main food groups ripped out of his left knee. But Adrian Peterson, the pitch was this to him by Bob Stoops: we're going to win without you, but we'd like to win with you. and Oklahoma gets Adrian Peterson. I see Adrian Peterson on one leg and a swollen right ankle run for 185 on Nebraska in 05 in Lincoln. I'm like, good God. In 04, we went for 2 bills against Nebraska. That was a forgettable 30-3. Thank you, Paul Castle, for getting at least the cover and the field goal for Nebraska on the fullback trap play down in Norman in 04. But Adrian Peterson, to me, is a guy that was super hyped, lived up to it on the football field, and off the field, you know, the guy's kind of crazy and a bit of a goon, but on the field, the guy's still money as a running back. I know he's had some fumbling issues, but Peterson's one of those guys I'm like, wow, incredibly tremendous. Trevor Lawrence also. He's a guy that was advertised in a recruiting era, came in, 6 games in, delivered 2 championships to Clemson, and has flipped Jacksonville. That's another guy.
And what's different about Wembenyama, though, is it feels like anything short of you becoming the best player in the world in 5 years is going to be a disappointment. I don't think you can say the same about half these players we just talked about.
No, there's a difference. And, I mean, it's LeBron-type hype.
Yes.
And it's international. More on this topic. Hail Varsity continues.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow Thursday. We're here at Zipline, downtown Omaha Tap Room. Roadshow ahead of the College World Series elimination game tonight. Wake Forest, LSU. There's all sorts of Bayou Bengals bellied up to the Tap Room bar here at Zipline, North 14th Street, downtown Omaha. 721, the location. We're just a half block from the Charles Schwab Field. Reminder about your friends from Dyer Law, and a congratulations to Dyer Law. They took fight in front of a federal jury in Omaha, and after days of testimony, the jury awarded their client $3 million in damages, which is huge. You can trust in the team at Dyer to help ensure that your rights are protected and to get the settlement you deserve. Call the Dyer Law team today at 402-393-7529 or visit Dyer.law to chat with a trusted professional about your claim. That's Dyer.law, 402-393-7529. Plenty of podcast options for you with today's show. Gary Barnett on what it takes to make an impactful official visit weekend. His thoughts on that with us earlier in hour one. Cedric Golden joined us to talk about the hype and players that were really overly hyped, and many of them delivered in that high-profile draft, be it the Randy Mosses of the world, Kobe Bryant, Deion Sanders. So good talk with Cedric there, and his perspective being a long-time sports name and writer with the Austin American-Statesman. So Ced had some great insight on just what's available in Texas recruiting-wise and that Matt Rhule effect. So listen to Cedric from hour one. Pat Casey, Oregon State head coach forever, and won 3 national championships despite his wine tour in France. Gave us a few minutes to talk some Husker baseball and the College World Series. We're talking about those as good as advertised players from college to the pros, or even from the high school ranks through the college years and into the NFL. You have Wemby going to be the number 1 guy overall with San Antonio tonight with the NBA draft. Level of excitement, Connor, level of excitement, Elijah, about the draft on a scale of 1 to 10. Your number is what tonight?
Connor, start with you.
I mean, I'm excited just because, there's been all the hype about Wemby, and we finally get to see him walk across the stage, go to the Spurs, what have it. But as a Bulls fan, I'm not very excited because we don't have a pick in the lottery. I don't even think we have a first-round pick. That's how much I've been paying attention to what the Bulls have been doing this offseason. And, I'm more focused on, because there's been so many big trades that have happened in the NBA here in the past week or so, too. I mean, the league is going through a big shift, and you're going to see a lot of new guys in different places this year, and it's going to be a very different NBA. I mean, you just saw Marcus Smart. He's not going to be in Boston anymore. Bradley Beal, he's going to be in Phoenix. So that's kind of what I've been prioritizing my focus on. The Bulls apparently are taking calls about Zach LaVine and trading him potentially. So that's another one that I'm, kind of surrounding my NBA energy on. But I'm excited to see Wemby go to the Spurs. I think it's a great situation for him, too, to get coached by Pop right out of the gate. So it'll be interesting. And I'm also excited to see where other fellow Big Ten guys go, such as Jalen Hood-Schifino, Chris Murray. The list goes on. So that's what I'm excited for tonight.
Yeah, and I wanted you to go first, Connor, because I didn't want to be the Debbie Downer to say I'm not excited at all about the draft. The Nuggets actually just traded back up into the first round. They used some draft capital in the future years in order to get some draft capital this year. That's obviously because they have 3 guys on a max contract right now, an MPJ, Jamal Murray, and Nikola Jokic. So you need to have your rookie guys pop, the guys that are on a rookie contract. But the Nuggets have some of those guys in the tank right now, so I think you have some flexibility. If you screw it up this year, you don't have a single guy who gets a single minute for the Nuggets. I still think the Nuggets are going to be all right moving forward. So I'm not that excited for the draft from a Nuggets point of view. From an intrigue point of view, it sounds pretty much like the first 3 is going to be Wembenyama, and just to let you know how much of a foregone conclusion that is, if you go down to the Warhorse, it's a $20,000 bet to take home $100 if Wembenyama goes first overall. So it's a foregone conclusion according to Vegas. That's going to be your number 1 overall pick.
We'll just pass the hat, fellas.
At number 2, it sounds like it's going to be Scoot Henderson.
Yeah.
There was some rumors out there earlier this week about it being Miller from Alabama. Now it looks like Miller's going to be going number 3, so Charlotte's probably going to pick up Scoot Henderson. And then beyond that, there's deep talent in the lottery, but there isn't necessarily that high-end talent outside the top 3. So if you already know where the top 3 is going to be, I don't really get the intrigue with this draft, and I'd rather be watching College World Series.
Well, sure. Elijah, too, your team just won an NBA championship about 2 weeks ago, so I don't blame you in the slightest there. You shouldn't be paying attention if I'm you.
Yeah, and, the Nuggets got a great piece last year in Christian Brown, 21 overall. That's what the Nuggets need. The Nuggets need role players, guys that can come off the bench and serve a very specific role in a finals run. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not well researched on this current NBA draft class to know who some of those guys between 20 and 40 are going to be.
You don't know them because they're either G League,
not too, yeah,
or they're international. And the international flavor's been really good for the NBA. It's been great for the Spurs historically. But you look at Giannis, you look at Jokic, and now you look at Wemby. I mean, those are two
Embiid
proven.
As well. I mean, your top 3 players in the league right now, Embiid, Jokic, and Giannis. Doncic is probably coming in 4th. 4 of your top 5 players in the NBA are from overseas right now.
Yeah, and Embiid's a KU guy. Steve emails in, Chris at HailVarsity.com. When it comes to Zion not living up, but I'm agreeing with you, Connor and Elijah. I mean, Zion was kind of the last college player I was zeroed in on as well. How's he going to translate? There was a ton of hype around him. Steve was asking about the LSU quarterback that went to the Raiders, number 1 overall.
Jamarcus Russell.
Jamarcus Russell. That was after the LSU national championship team that Bo was defensive coordinator on. He was reading what Steve wrote here. I forget the LSU quarterback that was drafted by the Raiders, number 1, and it was a guy that didn't keep in shape and got all that guaranteed money and didn't have to work for anything.
Well, my favorite Jamarcus Russell story is that the coaching staff used to send him home with blank tapes. They'd give him tapes, nothing on him, and tell him that was the scouting report that week. And he'd come back the next day of practice and say, yeah, I watched it all. I saw this, I saw this, I saw this. And the coaching staff wouldn't say it, but they'd know behind the scenes, we didn't put anything on that tape. You didn't watch anything yesterday.
Yeah,
that was Jamarcus Russell for you. But the difference is I don't think anyone was expecting Jamarcus Russell to be the number one player in football come 2 or 3 years from now, and that's the level of expectation you have with Wembenyama. If you're not LeBron, if you're not winning multiple titles, you're not winning multiple MVPs, his career is going to be seen as a disappointment. I think that level of expectation puts him in a very exclusive crowd, despite the hype that we've seen with a lot of these guys. That's another level to say, if you're not LeBron, if you're not MJ, if you're not that level of transcendent in the NBA, you're not going to be living up to your expectations.
I think and I think you look at NBA versus some of the other sports, I think when you look at a Magic, a Larry, a LeBron, those guys are franchise changers. I finished watching the Bill Walton 30 for 30 last night, and he was seen as that savior. It's not that you're not seen as a savior as a major piece, a Mickey Mantle, a Joe DiMaggio, a Bob Gibson-type player to your Major League Baseball team, or even an Adrian Peterson or Ricky Williams or Herschel Walker to your NFL team. There's a ton of other guys. In basketball, you're 1/5 of the solution, but that could be a lot of weight with the one spot. I bring up Kevin Durant because he was a lot like Magic, a guy that no one had really ever seen before, size-wise, at damn near 7 feet that can launch threes, and that is, Junior's favorite player before he left Oklahoma City. And that's one guy that I was really locked in on to see how he would translate. We'll wind down a Thursday next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time here from Zipline, a Thursday road show at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. Connor Clark back at our KFOR and Hail Varsity Radio studios. 489-1240. 489-1240. Delivering the hype as good as advertised. A topic with number one draft pick looming tonight in the NBA, but draft picks over the years. My two, Griffey and Vic, and even Peyton Manning, if I go back a little further with that top pick overall. The great debate then was, do you take Peyton over Leaf? Do you take Leaf over Peyton? Remember, as a kid, John Elway was the name, the buzz, and he threatened to go to the Yankees if he ended up getting drafted by Indy. And then there was the Bo Jackson saga, where Bo got his senior year of eligibility taken away for college baseball because of George Steinbrenner. And the Tampa Bay Bucks still drafted Bo number one overall in football. Bo said, forget you guys, channel your inner Eric Cartman voice. And then Bo went and played baseball for the Royals, and then Al Davis said, Bo, why don't you come play running back for us? And, man, he was electric. Reminder to use your seatbelt. Using your seatbelt saves lives, prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Started off talking recruiting. Tomorrow morning we'll know if Nebraska added 2 in-state talents to the recruiting board for 2024 with McMorris and Davon Hall, both Bell West prospects. And their 7-on-7 camp and tournament continues tomorrow. Coach Huffman will be with us. We're planning on Monday of next week.
Awesome.
We love Huff.
And I dare I say, feels I don't want to call it a foregone conclusion because you don't want to count your chickens before they're hatched. But the only solution that makes sense tomorrow with both these guys being in Lincoln and what we've heard the past week, the smoke we've seen, what they're saying on social media, Nebraska's the only choice that seems to make sense to me tomorrow, because if these guys end up, if one of them picks a different
school. One says USC and one says Tennessee, lead balloon. But hey, the official visit weekend,
they're
right?
still in Lincoln. Like, that would just be an absolute mess. So I think Nebraska, to me, feels like the foregone conclusion. But before we get out of here, I want to get your guys' thoughts on who takes it tonight, LSU and Wake, who's going to be advancing to the College World Series finals.
I'm going to go with LSU and their stud tonight. Wake loses for the first time all season when it comes to back-to-back games. They're going to have an all-SEC final. I'm going to go with Coach Pat Casey, who joined us this hour, his take. And he thinks it's, he can relate quite a bit to Wake. But he's like, that being said, I think there's just too much LSU.
Well, I'm going Wake personally. And I've been telling Schmidt this week, my picks this year for the College World Series have been pretty good. I've only screwed up one game, and I haven't gone official with any of these picks. This is the first one I've gone official with, so I'm probably going to screw it up now. I'm going Wake tonight. I think Wake in Florida is going to make a compelling College World Series final. I think Wake just got way too much talent to, as you said, lose back-to-back games.
I'm going to
Connor, you got to lean?
I agree with you, Schmidt. I think LSU is going to get it done here tonight. I know Wake is the number 1 seed, but I think it's just going to be too much SEC at the end of the day, and I think LSU has shown that I think they're the best team in this field right now, so I'm going to go with LSU in a tight one, though, tonight. I think it's going to be a hell of a game.
Yep, going to be awesome. Enjoy it, and we'll be back at you tomorrow. Full-on recruiting thoughts. Big official visit weekend for Nebraska. We'll be with you at 4 tomorrow on Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.